Hello, it's a pleasure to be here. My name is Jes Madsen. I'm a Dane, and now I'm working in the Saudi Pro League. But what I'm presenting today is a bit more of a pet project of mine, you could say, an area within elite football, elite performance that I think needs a lot more attention and has a lot of possibility for development and revenue in the future. So first of all, I'm just going to talk slightly about cognition in elite football. What is it? Where is it today? I'm going to show you the model of cognition, which is part of a scientific work that we published in December. And then I'm going to look at current possibilities and future possibilities. So if we look at cognition in elite football, when I started working in football, which was 5 years ago, I came as a neuroscientist. So I was studying Alzheimer's, I was studying chronic pain, and I suddenly found myself in a football club, which was kind of weird because in research, you need a result every 3 years. In football, you need a result every weekend. So it's a completely different environment. But I was tasked with figuring a way to measure game intelligence in elite footballers. And my first question was, well, what's the research on it? Because in Alzheimer's or other types of research in neuroscience, you have tons and tons of research. But I realized there's not really a lot in football. So I basically wrote this paper called Cognition in Elite Soccer Players, which is giving a theory and a hypothesis about which perception and cognition happens in elite football. That allows you to now do research and analyze players. So, quickly, I was a neuroscientist at Bispebjerg Hospital. I was a lecturer in neuroplasticity. I was then the head of research and development in FC Copenhagen, and now I'm the director of football and data science for the Saudi Pro League. So, what is cognitive science? Well, basically, it is a science describing the brain functions and brain processes. So you would study attention, memory, learning, perception, language processing, and so forth. But the really important distinction for cognition is that the way to view cognition is that it's psychology, but it's with numbers. Meaning that if we're looking at attention, from psychology, you might describe what attention is. From cognitive neuroscience, you'll describe for how long can a human being be attentive to a specific object. Right? Or memory, well, memory is whatever you experienced in your whole life and blah, blah, blah. In cognitive neuroscience, it's actually how many digits can you have in your mind for a period of time. So it's the measurement of these functions. So the big problem that I have in football is, I'm not going to go through all of these, but neuroscience mainly works with animal models, right? So what you often do is you make a genetic modified little fly or rat, and then you operate into its nervous system. That's a big problem because you cannot do that on elite football players. Another thing, you might want to open the brain and look for connections and understand the brain. Again, we cannot do that on elite football players. The last thing is clinical experimentation. Again, we cannot do that on elite football players. So we're stuck with that. However, the field is growing. There's a growing trend. Everyone is talking about game intelligence. Probably the hardest field in football now is understanding what is decision making. Because it doesn't matter how fast you can run or how strong you are if you're constantly making bad decisions. And that is what actually is distinguishing the greatest players in the world, is that they are extremely good at making the right decisions. Just think about Zinedine Zidane, Luka Modric, Toni Kroos. These legends in the game are actually signified by their ability to make good decisions. So a lot of people are looking into this. There's multiple products, there's books, there's testing tools, but everyone is a bit confused what is cognitive science actually and what it's supposed to do in football. But if you think about this question, so the brain is basically, it's you, right? So it's the brain playing football. It's the most important organ for behavior and performance, yet it's the least understood when it comes to performance. So tackling that area and understanding that better is extremely essential to increase performance in athletes. So game intelligence was the question that I was asked first in Copenhagen. What is it? Can we measure it? My answer is no, and don't bother, don't do it. It's just a concept. No one really knows what it is. So if you want me to measure something as a scientist, I'll say, well, give me something we can measure. Game intelligence is just making everyone confused because we all say that it's the same players that are game intelligent. We have huge bias. It's never the wing, it's never the right back, it's never the goalkeeper. But we do know that there must be different levels of game intelligence for each position, so we must be able to measure that. So the idea was then, okay, so let's create a scientific model that allows us to do that. So I'm not going to go through the model because I can see people always get tired when they see this. And imagine going into to coaches sitting in a room preparing training and showing them this. They don't care. But when you start to explain how this is relevant for performance, that's when they start to listen. Because scanning and attention, pattern recognition, anticipation, executive functions are actually all cognitive functions that we can measure and that have been measured for a long time within cognitive science. So when you have a model of what happens when you play football, you scan your environment, your attention is important for that. You use pattern recognition through how you're trained. You anticipate what's going to happen. Your working memory is now presenting basically an image of what is happening. Your executive functions then go in and basically helps you decide on which types of responses to choose. You then do an action, and then you get a feedback through the whole system, so it's a dynamic system in itself. So we could have this system constantly changing over time and through the match. So since these are measurable, we can actually use them in the game to understand our players. So the problem is that right now, a lot of clubs just think that what you need is to go to the market, buy a test, do the test on all your players, and now magically you're doing cognitive science in football. That's not how it works, right? So that would be the same of going out and buying GPS units for tracking your players' run and then don't have a way to analyze the data. That's of course nonsense, right? So you need to have an idea of how you want to do it. So of course you need to choose what kind of test do I want to use. You need to figure out how do I want to profile players within cognition. And then you have to figure out how do we add this to your training. Because as you're testing how fast your players can run, you also have ideas on how you train your player's speed. So that's the same here. So you have to make an implementation with cognitive neuroscience that goes from test to profiling to implementation in the club. And interestingly, there was just here a talk about e-gaming, and I think actually, e-gaming is extremely suitable for cognitive models because not only is it's a very cognitive demanding task to play Counter-Strike. The other thing is that you're getting data points on basically every single click that's happening, so the feedback and the understanding of what's happening is extremely well suited for cognitive models. So there's tons of different tests and batteries today. I'm not going to say what's better, what's good, but you have classic cognitive tests. You have people building whole arenas where you can play football and it's measuring. It's not really that successful. You have VR solutions. You have cognitive software. And then you have what we developed in Copenhagen, which is video analysis of players' behavior, which is what I think you should do. So these solutions might look something like this. The only thing that is missing in all of these alternatives, now I know I can't ask the crowd, but I'll always ask what's missing. The thing that's missing is actually people playing football, right? So think about how ridiculous the idea is that you want to measure football ability, and your first answer is, okay, let's take them away and put them in front of a computer screen and see how good they are at clicking at certain stimuli, right? And the reason why people go to this is because the brain is extremely complex. if we were tasked, like we understand the universe better than we understand the brain, right? So the task of doing this is not simple, but you have to start on the pitch, in the exercise, in front of the screen playing Counter-Strike. That's where the starting point should be, because the idea here is that if I train you in something separate, that will transfer to what you need to do, right? But if I wanted someone to become good at Counter-Strike, it wouldn't make any sense to ask them to do 20 minutes every day doing something completely different than that and transfer it. You actually need to train within the environment to become better, and that's insights from neuroscience. That's fundamental ideas about how do you train perception. You train it within the environment. You need to be good at it. And so that's the lack of these systems, is that these people become really good at that system. And then they go to the pitch, and then we've seen in multiple studies there's absolutely no effect. Okay, so going to cognitive profiling, this is one way that we have solved it previously in the past. This is from Copenhagen. So the idea is here that, so by the way, the first time I ever showed this data with all the testing we did on the players, I didn't do a visualization. I just sent them the Excel sheets with all the data, and no one had any idea what I was talking about. So I realized, okay, wait a minute. I actually have to go in and describe what these things are. And so the idea is that there are 4 main categories that are relevant for football performance. It's visual, so that's pattern recognition, working memory, the ability to keep an image in your mind and manipulate it. Scanning is hugely interesting and a topic that has a lot of attention. It's basically your ability to look around in your environment, right? So when we look at player scanning, we look at how much are they actually moving their head in a game. And the highest recorded scanning ever was Xavi Hernandez when he played in Barcelona. Currently, the highest measured scanning is Erling Haaland, the best striker in the world, when he's in the box. Okay? So when you go and do these analysis, what you find is that the players that scan the most are very, very good players. They weren't coached in it, they just figured out this is a strategy that works. Okay, so then you have reaction, which is reaction time, inhibition, the ability to stop doing something and doing something else. And then we have processing, which is called processing, but it's actually what we call general intelligence, because we are also interested in understanding how intelligent is the athlete, because that has interesting consequences for his life in general. A modern athlete needs to be able to know when to sleep, what to eat, how to listen to the coach, how to engage in his environment, how to speak English, how to speak Danish, how to speak Italian. General intelligence will help with many of these tasks in order for him to succeed. So that's why we want to do that as well. So now when you have a model and you have a cognitive profiling, now you can actually start to, one, understand where that player is in relationship to other players and in relationship to his age group. But it also allows you to understand that those 2 players are competing, but that player is lacking in cognitive functions that are very, very important for him to succeed, and that allows us as a club to help him get better at scanning, help him get better at working memory, and thereby increasing his performance. Okay, so really what you then do is when you've done all the testing, you actually have to go into the actual thing where you want to make people better, if it's football or volleyball or Counter-Strike, and then you have to coach on their behaviors that are related to the cognitive functions. Now that's a bigger work because you need expertise, knowledge about the given thing that you want to make players better at, right? So my first years in Copenhagen, I didn't know anything about football. So when I came to them and said, hey, his inhibition is low, they said, so what? I don't care. He's a great winger. But over time, you have to work with the people and try to make them understand what does inhibition mean for his performance. And that's where you slowly integrate that into the training. It's a lot more complicated. It's a lot more problematic. But if you actually want to have an effect on football players, then you have to talk about football, right? And I'm saying this a lot, but I think it's in some way the same problem that football has been having with data analysis, is that you can do all these insane, great data models on recruitment of players or optimization or injury prediction, but if you're not actually in the field working with the people making decisions on the data, then you're probably not helping them. And in some ways, football data has become like this own little area where everyone is trying to predict or give it to betting, but the clubs are not using it sufficiently because it's not being integrated sufficiently with the clubs. And that's what I want to make sure that doesn't happen in cognitive science, because it's a field I love and it's a field I know can have an impact. So really, the idea is that if you train players in these 4 things and thereby optimize their processing of the world, your benefit will be increased decision making. Okay? So everyone is focused on how do we make decision making better? And what people do is they look at the decisions and the outcome of the decisions. What I'm saying is, if you want to understand the decision, look at everything that happened prior to the decision. So we're saying that if you have a very good scanning technique, if you have a well-developed inhibition, good executive functions, and visual intelligence, that gives you almost perfect information to make the right decision, right? So it's kind of a slight paradigm shift in how you look at players, because the way data works today is all outcome-based. We want to take basically the outcome away, because football outcomes are very probabilistic, they're very random, and you just look at how well prepared is the player to make the decision. And if you get players that are well prepared, the likelihood of them making the decision you want is going to be higher. The other problem with decision making is that it's actually the coach telling the players what to do, and you don't know if the coach is good or not. So it's difficult to actually look at the decisions actually made. Okay, so this is now my call for innovation in this field. I've been working in cognition and football for 4 to 5 years. I've seen all the tests, I've seen everything. And these are my simple ideas for where this could go forward. And I know that there are so many clubs out there trying to find someone or something that will actually help them realize these ideas. So first, don't oversell. Don't tell them that a 15-minute test can predict who's going to be the next Messi. It doesn't exist. It's the human brain. It's the real world. What creates a successful athlete is thousands of different variables. Don't oversimplify. Don't say it's that simple. So that might go together. You're overselling by oversimplifying. Rather, tell them how complex it is. 3, we probably need one gold standard test. And there are many different good parts of tests today that are verified and are gold standard. Someone has to sit, create basically a business, puts them all together, creates a very good test. Also, the test must encompass on and off the pitch capabilities of players, so general intelligence, but also on-pitch intelligence. The on-pitch intelligence can be done with video analysis, computer vision, which is more than possible today. And you need a test, you need a methodology, and you need practice. If you want to affect an environment, if you want to affect football, make sure that it goes to the practice. That's where it happens. And then, the field is very, very open. I think the opportunities are basically endless for this. And I'm just hoping to one day meet someone who said, I heard your call for innovation, and this is the product we have, and this is the solution. So, thank you.